Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And if you are tuning in live with us, obviously we, as always, really appreciate you guys for doing so. Yes, as MIMC313 is already giving us a hard time about, we did start just a couple minutes late on this one. We didn't have a episode last week because our guy Blake here had a bit of a migraine issue. He's being a trooper today as well, still coming on, so doing the show. So, I mean, I can't even imagine being sick with the one baby that I have right now. I've been blessed to not have that happen yet, at least not really bad. So I can't imagine a multiple day thing. I don't know how you guys are making it work. It's impressive. Yeah.
Oh man, it's not fun because the kids are still rolling no matter what happens. Sometimes when they're still sick too, so that's fun. You just got to get through it like we all do. But no, I'm doing good. I appreciate it.
As long as I just want to kick that down the road as long as I can. I know it's going to happen, but I'm worried about it with even the one. So mad respect to you guys for figuring that all out. Last week, guys, we did our I guess it'd be kind of a week and a half ago. We did the boring offseason plan, right? Like we're going to run it back. Let's see what's what. Well, we thought it'd be kind of fun this week to do kind of the all-in thing, right? Like try to make a bigger move, see if you can't get a bigger upgrade in talent for the roster, be that by trading out picks, be that trading out some important names. And guys, I think next week what we're going to try to do is more of a draft-centric show as we're kind of coming up on that as well. So you know how it goes, right? We're just we've got a constrained off-season here where the Pistons were thankfully competitive later on into the summer, much more so than they have been in previous years. So we got to squeeze a bunch of stuff in here before all the big dominoes start falling in the offseason. And if we have time at the end of this one, maybe we'll talk a little bit about the NBA Finals going on right now. We got Game 4 we're recording on the day of, and the Spurs, of course, just had one heck of a Game 3 victory. So this should be interesting. Let's look ahead, though. All right, Pistons offseason plan. I actually made two more or less all-in moves, and I'm going to let you kind of pick your poison here. Do you want the crazy trade for Trey Murphy, or do you want the kind of sort of helping the Thunder out with some cap space stuff? Where do you want me to go first?
Let's start with Trey Murphy because I feel like that's a big one that has been talked about. So that's a good one to hit first. And I have I know a little bit of what's coming with the Thunder, but definitely more in tune with the Trey Murphy one. So we can leave a little surprise there.
All right, so let's do this because, look, guys, I mean, the report even just came out, I think like yesterday, that the Pelicans don't want to trade Trey Murphy for anything that's more like future focus. So that already could be an issue for this one, if that is true. But basically, I think you're looking at this. The Pelicans have no reason to trade the guy. Okay, he's on a great contract. He's a young player, very, very good young player at a premium position as well. It doesn't make sense for them to really want to move on from him. He fits anywhere and he does a great job on the money that he's being paid. So this is essentially, you're kind of emptying the clip. Right. So the way I had it is basically Ron Holland and then salary to match. So Karis LeVert, Marcus Sasser. Marcus Sasser, maybe you think there's a little bit of value there, but not necessarily with Karis LeVert. But then it's 3 first-round picks, entirely unprotected. And with the way that the lottery's going, all the rules changes that just happened, that's actually really risky, right? So the way you have to alternate picks here, so it's 2027, 2029, and 2031. If you wanted to add the 4th first-round pick, you could, in theory, do this trade on draft night as well, I believe, because then technically the pick would be you're trading the pick as you're making it. But I think the 3 is kind of a good number to have for the first round picks there. And all you're getting back here is Trey Murphy. So I guess my question to you, Blake, is one, is that worth it? Because frankly, I don't know if that was enough, right? Like I was looking at this going, do you need an Isaiah Stewart in this deal? do you need to figure out a way to get a couple of pick swaps too, right? Like, does this truly empty the clip instead of just really, really taking it down? So, obviously you could talk a little bit on the idea of Trey Murphy, why he'd be such a good fit, but then, just the realistic conversation of, man, like, is this even enough to go get him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's a great fit. He brings a guy who scored 20 points or more in each of the past 2 seasons. He shoots well from 3. He defends. He fits what this team needs. I think the report you mentioned was the Pelicans want to improve now if they're going to deal Trey Murphy. And while I think that they don't really need to do that, because I'm not sure how they're going to improve immediately, I think they would be more wise to take draft capital and like punt things down the road a little bit. I know they've been doing that for forever, what it seems, but yeah, I'm not sure that package gets it done. Like, maybe you need to add swaps. Maybe you need to put Isaiah Stewart in there. Maybe even the Pelicans don't entertain anything unless one of Asar Thompson or Jalen Duren is included. So, I mean, I think it's a good trade because you bring in Trey Murphy and you don't give up Cade Cunningham, you don't give up Jalen Duren, you don't give up Asar Thompson. And I know you have some other moves that are going to help with some of the holes, but yeah, like, I think it would be a deal that the Pelicans would be wise to make, because you're basically gaining control over one team's full foreseeable draft future. But based on what we know, I'm not sure if they'll do it. It's looking like no right now, which is fine, because I mean, giving up that many picks and a young prospect like Ron Holland, who maybe his value is a little bit down right now, but I still think it would be pretty early to give up on him. Like, maybe that's okay too.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was landing as well. Like, as crazy as it is to say, I just kind of don't think that's really enough. Just to round this one out, though, Anthony Simons on the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception. What would you think about that kind of move?
Yeah, I think it would be great, because I mean, it brings a scorer, a guy who can shoot. I mean, we still have Dennis Jenkins, who can provide some ball handling. And I mean, Simons is a guy, you can bring him off the bench, you can start him when you need to. So I think, and especially like at the deal, 2 years for $15 million a year, I think that probably works with what he's about looking for. And also it works for the Pistons fitting in the non-taxpayer MLE. He like falls in that tier for me of guys like Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, who would all be great ads for this team. It's just a matter of like, will they get them? The good news is I think the Pistons have a much better free agent pitch this year with how they performed, and just a young team that's only on the up and up. So I would be all in on Simons.
I will say the one thing that continues to give me a little bit of pause about all of these smaller guards, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about Colin Sexton last show, now talking about Anthony Simons. Like, I would be real worried about playing those guys off the bench with Dennis Jenkins. I would. The size and the defense. I know Jenkins he's got a little bit of height and length to him, but he's pretty wispy. There's not a lot to him right now, unless he's going to add on a bunch of strength, which you never know, right? Totally possible over the offseason. But point being, like, I don't know if Jenkins and Simons could play together for many minutes off the bench. That would make me a little concerned. And if you're talking about moving Simons into the starting lineup, I mean, that's possible. But again, you're talking about some pretty severe defensive lapses there. Maybe the best thing to do in this instance would be to have Simons be that backup point guard and actually start Jenkins over Robinson, only to achieve this idea of not playing the two of them together, them being Jenkins and Simons. But I don't know. Like, I still like the idea of Simons, but maybe I would have been better off going Kobe White in this instance, just to get a little bit more size off the bench. The last one here, and this is really, we should have talked about this guy last week. Isaac Bonga. Totally forgot that, he's actually, I don't want to say he's promised anything, but it sounds like he's a fairly sure thing to be playing for the Detroit Pistons next year. I don't know what the deal would be. You'd have to imagine it's a little bit more than the veterans minimum, and maybe kind of being maybe more than that room exception as well. I know that the Pistons ate into the biannual exception to go and get Danis Jenkins on that long-term contract for him. So probably maybe somewhere close to the room exception. So thinking like $5 to $8 million in average annual value. But I mean, have you followed Bonga much since he left? Like, what are the Pistons looking at getting here? Obviously, he's a wing, good size to him, good athlete. This is all me more or less remembering him from his time with the Lakers, I believe.
Yeah, I've not followed him. I mean, he's playing in Serbia for Partizan, which is like one of the best international teams, but I'd be lying if I said I was keeping up with what he's doing there. I mean, it's a good sign. He's really at the highest level of international competition. I think the best, if you look back at his NBA career, the biggest sample is in the 2019-20 season when he was with the Wizards. He played in 66 games, started 49 of those. 19 minutes, just average 5 points, 3.4 rebounds, 1.2 assists, and 1 stock a game. Like, I think coming in, he's a depth piece that just brings some size off the bench. I mean, he's never really shot threes at volume. I don't think you're bringing him in to do that. I think he's just another one of those depth wings. Like all of our plans, we've talked about renouncing Wendell Moore. I think maybe he slides into that kind of role, who isn't in the rotation, but is there if you need him and can defend. And I don't think you're going to get too much from him on offense, but it's an interesting play. Like, and if the international scouts believe in him, like, I don't mind it at all. And he's still, he's 26. So it's not like you're bringing in a super veteran guy by any means. He still sort of fits everything. So I'm intrigued, but there's a lot. Like, I got to see what it looks like when he gets here.
All right, so to wrap up this kind of all-in for Trey Murphy offseason plan, there's one final wrench that I have to throw in this one, and that is to say, if the Pistons actually were to make this trade, so you're not sending out Isaiah Stewart, the only salary that's coming off the books is Karis LeVert, Ron Holland, and Marcus Sasser. You're getting back Trey Murphy. When you sign Tobias Harris, so let's just keep that same contract from last time, 2 years, $16 million, in average annual value. When you re-sign Jalen Duren, about that same contract, right on the bottom amount of what's been reported as maybe the range. So we're talking 5 years, $40 million on average annual value. If you sign Simons to that non-taxpayer mid-level exception and you bring in Bonga for, we'll call that somewhere near the room exception, both the trade for Trey Murphy and the signing a player for the non-taxpayer mid-level exception hard caps you at the first apron, as far as I understand it. And with the cap as it is, you only have room for one more veteran minimum contract. One. And the challenge with that is you are currently, the way I've set up that offseason, at 13 players. You will have to carry an open roster spot into the season. You're not going to be able to actually literally cannot afford a 15 player. That is how close you are to the line here. So with that vet min, I brought back Javonte Green, but I bring that up to say, like, look, guys, anytime you're making, if you're trying to like plan out these off seasons, right? That first apron, you run up close to it. It becomes a big issue, even if you figure you're not bringing back Tobias Harris. Like, you will get trust me, you will get closer to that first apron quicker than you would think. And in this case, it became particularly problematic, and I just kind of ran with it. So, I mean, we've had debates before, right, about not filling out the roster, carrying in that open roster spot into the season. In this case, you'd actually have to do that, which could be a bit of a gamble for depth as well. Point being, I think we could shift it over to yours. Like, what do you have as their all-in move if you were calling the shots?
So, okay, I'm gonna preface this by saying, like, it's not necessarily what I would do, and I'm not sure if it's like the right move, but I've seen a lot of talk about it, so I figured it was worth talking about. Just a fair warning, I did it. I made the Kawhi Leonard trade work. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think this is actually going to happen because all the cap stuff that you were talking about, like, it really makes things tight. Re-sign Duren, keeping Asar, everything like that. But, and just to preface, I mean, we're not really talking about the retaining that we're doing, but I brought back Javonte Green to Tobias and re-signed Duren to a similar deal that you did. So the trade that I made for Kawhi was Karis LeVert, Ron Holland, Isaiah Stewart, and Tolu Smith. And Tolu's just a guy that the Clippers could clear off the books. 2 first-round picks. You probably have to throw in the swap in the year in between there. That's a lot, just because Kawhi only has 1 year left on his deal and he's 35 years old. Obviously, he'll help this team. I mean, we can talk about his availability. That's a big question, but bringing in a guy who makes $50 million a year really tightens everything up. But I did want to at least try to make that work because I've seen a lot about it. So I can stop there before I touch on my other moves. Oh, looks like Wes had to run for a second. So I'm going to run through mine. So I did make another trade because obviously I'm sending out a lot of players and I'm making the cap situation a little bit tricky. So you have to fill the roster one way or another. You can try to do it by minimum deals, but that gets hard when you're capped at the first apron. So I made a trade with Wes was very offended by the Kawhi trade, so he had to leave. So I made a trade with the Pelicans as well as a follow-up to this. It's not for Trey Murphy because you just can't make that work. Sent out Marcus Sasser. You can add a couple like second round picks to this if you need. I don't think you need anything like a first, and the Pistons would obviously have to send out first round picks in the Kawhi deal. But sending out Marcus Sasser plus whatever draft capital you need for Karlo Matkovic, who's like a floor spacing big. I mean, he's had some nice moments with the Pelicans, another international guy. I like him as a third center, especially if you're sending out Stewart, and Jordan Hawkins, bringing him back as well. So that fills one of my roster spots there. And Hawkins, obviously he took a step back, but he could be a guy that the Pelicans are willing to give up for the cheap. And I think he could be a rotation player at the very least for Detroit. And we know he was a guy in the draft that we talked about at length that could really help this team. And I think take a shot there, especially when you have to find ways to fill the roster after you're making such a big trade that's sending out so many players. After that, the only move I made that put me at 13 players. So then I made one more signing. I went back to my favorite reunion with Tim Hardaway Jr. just after his strong season on a 1-year vet minimum deal. So that would put me at 14. Everything Wes said applies to this too. Like, you come in with a tricky cap situation, you're capped at the at the first apron. I was right up against it with all these moves. Would have to carry an open roster spot. I think this front office would be open to that. We've seen them do it in the past. You probably couldn't like convert a two-way guy immediately, but as the season goes on, their salary prorates, so you can rely on those players and convert one once you can afford to, essentially. But Wes, I'll let you digest all that. I know you stepped out, so anything else I need to fill you in on, just let me know.
Yeah, just give me the package you sent out for Kawhi. I'm sorry, we've got someone working to clear out a tree right now, and they needed me to move my car.
Oh wow, that is very impressive to do in the middle of a podcast.
But I like that. Yeah, impressive instead of just poor planning. I'll take it.
The Kawhi package was Karis LeVert, Ron Holland, Isaiah Stewart, Tolu Smith, and 2 first-round picks. Maybe you need to throw a swap in between there. And just in case, I'm not sure if you caught the next trade, but I made a trade with the Pelicans as well to try and fill up some of my roster spots because I sent out 4 players for 1. And I did that by sending out Marcus Sasser, and you probably need to add like 1 or multiple second-round picks to this, but I brought back Carlo Matkovich and Jordan Hawkins, and then signed Tim Hardaway Jr. on a 1-year vetman deal.
Yeah, I like Jordan Hawkins actually, but man, the Kawhi thing is just so tough, right? So we've already got Pistons fan 11 in the live chat talking about the aspiration stuff with that Kawhi contract and what have you, but it's the thing. He's such a win now move, and I get that that's the all-in plan, right? Like the idea is go win now. I just wonder, right? Like if the Pistons a Kawhi Leonard away from competing with what you're seeing out of the Spurs or what you're seeing out of, say, like the Thunder out in the Western Conference. It is really tough because Kawhi's a great player, right? And you got the injuries that you have to discount with. But if you're getting 60 games of Kawhi Leonard, if you can make sure he's healthy for the playoffs, I mean, that's huge if you're also keeping your other all-star, your other all-NBA player in Jalen Duren. Like it could really work out well. And, the one thing that the Pistons can possibly do that we haven't really talked about yet that honestly maybe they'd want to give it a go in this sort of scenario is to essentially waive Duncan Robinson, guarantee the $2 million, right? Waive him, say $15 million, and then try to bring him back on a much cheaper contract after the fact, banking in that you've already paid him the 2, right? But you'd need him to really be open to that because I don't think that even with a Kawhi, I don't think you could really afford to lose the shooting that Robinson would bring. So, man, it's so Michael Topper, Kawhi maybe puts you equal with the Knicks. I could see that. Yeah, Sean Haddix, Kawhi would maybe have another big old year and then get another big extension. I could see that too. I could also I could see it all going really wrong with the health aspect of this all. I think that's what's holding me back from being more on board, but that's also probably why you could possibly get a Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, and also I mean, the biggest holdup for me is he has 1 year left on his deal. Like we saw what happened with the Raptors, and obviously he's a 35-year-old guy. Like you're not bringing him in to play on this team for the next 10 years. You're bringing him in to compete for the next season and hopefully another 1 or 2 after that. But I wouldn't be fully convinced that he'd re-sign with the Pistons. I mean, maybe he would if it's another year of being like a true contender. But yeah, on top of the health, that is his contract is the biggest concern for me. Like not even monetarily, just lengthwise, because you're giving up a lot for one season of a guy. And I'm sure the Clippers will want as much as they can get for him. But like I don't think the Pistons would necessarily be willing to give that up for just one guaranteed season of a truly great player, unless they truly think they can win a championship next year, which maybe they do, right. But I don't know. The front office hasn't shown like much reflexiveness, which is why I think it's unlikely, but it is an interesting conversation.
So a couple of comments in the live chat here talking about the exceptions and some of the issues that come along with being an apron team, first and second. So Michael Dompier brings it up, right? So your first apron, when you're hard capped or where you're under the first apron, which is an amount over the salary cap that you could be, you lose access to some exceptions. You also obviously can't sign players with cap space. And there's some repeater stuff when it comes to being an over the cap team. But the bigger deal is the second apron. So Pistons fan 11 brings it up. He says, I think once you hit the apron, there's some restrictions in team building and trading. And then the second apron is where the big restrictions and penalties apply. The second apron is why you're probably going to see the Oklahoma City Thunder trying to shed a bunch of salary, because you can't, as the Thunder right now, send out two players in a contract. In a trade. You don't have access to hardly any exceptions. You start getting some draft pick penalties as well as time goes on. You can't take back, I don't believe you can even take back more salary. They make it essentially harder for you to trade for a big star piece, right? You can't aggregate multiple smaller contracts in order to go get a big superstar. You can't do stuff like that anymore. And that's obviously difficult to shed salary too, when you can't send out two contracts and bring back one. So the Thunder are going to be in a bit of a pickle. A couple other teams, I think Denver's trying to duck that as well. But yeah, that second apron, which truly that's where the Pistons are heading, right? When you've got Cade, you're going to have to pay Asar, you're going to have to pay Duran. All of that stuff's going to likely push you up close, if not into the second apron. You just have to understand that second apron, unless you are a Thunder team where you're winning or in a position to win multiple championships, maybe you're okay with it for a little bit, but even the Thunder are looking to get out from it, right? And they just obviously won last year. So that second apron is problematic, to say the least. Teams really want to avoid it, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and all the like when you use some of the exceptions that we're using to make these signings, then you just automatically get capped at the first apron, which maybe the Pistons try to avoid that too, but at least making these all-in moves, it's hard to do those without going over the cap and like using these exceptions and subsequently getting capped at the first apron. So that's sort of why we ran into those restrictions there.
All right, so one more kind of crazy offseason style plan for you, Blake. And we're talking about second apron teams. This is talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, all the usual stuff, right? You're announcing Kevin Huerter, you're announcing Javonte Green, you announced Wendell Moore Jr. Both of us did that for the previous ones as well. But so this is a trade that's actually two trades, okay? Because the Thunder, again, they cannot put two players in a trade when they're sending it out. So this would actually have to be two deals. But essentially, from the Pistons' perspective, it's just going to be one. So it's Ron Holland, Paul Reed, Marcus Sasser, and 4 second-round picks for Cason Wallace and Lou Dort. This saves the Thunder a little bit over $5 million in salary. They get to avoid paying Cason Wallace any extension, and they also get off Lou Dort's contract as well. Nets them multiple second-round picks where they can add future talent on the cheap. Paul Reed is one of the best values by contract at center. You still have a young player here in Ron Holland who they can develop and grow out on the wing for another 2 seasons, and Marcus Sasser is relatively cheap again next year, filling a role for them as a guard. Now the counter here would be, well, maybe they could just decline Lou Dort's team option and just clear that $17 million off the books. But my counter to that counter is, well, in this case, they get Ron Holland, who's a fairly exciting prospect, fits the type of player that they like, that the Thunder seem to like, and Paul Reed, as well as 4 second-round picks. So, yes, you lose Casey Wallace. Yes, you have to guarantee Lou Dort's deal in order to make this trade, but you get back some pretty solid assets in the process. Now, this isn't quite an all-in move, but I think it's not a conservative move either. Anytime you're getting rid or sending out Ron Holland, I think it's a pretty big deal. So what would you... Is that enough? Of course, is the first conversation. But what would you think of trying to poach the Thunder in a way with this one? Because I think all things considered, Wallace could probably net them a first. They would have no interest in first round picks. They can't even sign. They don't have roster space for the 2 first round picks they have this year, right? They don't want more. So what would you think about this kind of deal?
I mean, I think it all depends on what the Thunder want to do. I think this scenario leads them to keeping Hartenstein, who has like a $30 million team option for next year. I'm sure the Thunder will decline that and try to work out a new deal unless they trade him or let him walk. But this scenario definitely leads them to potentially keeping Hartenstein, which if they want to keep him in the mix, I think they would need to find a way to do that, because like Chet's extension is kicking it. Like they're just in a bad spot all around. And I mean, I'm sure the front office will find some way to make it work. And yeah, another big question for them over the offseason is obviously Lou Dort. What are they going to do with him? I think the most likely path, if they don't trade him, is hoping he takes a discount to come back. That's a big question because you're talking about real money he'd have to leave on the table. And Cason Wallace too, like he's eligible for an extension. That's a lot of money they'd have to commit. I mean, I don't think he'd get anywhere near their big 3, but yeah, that's taking like 2 solid wings away from them. Both can shoot. I mean, Wallace hasn't done it at volume really over his career. But yeah, the Thunder are certainly going to have to pull off some cap gymnastics, and this is one way that they can certainly do so. So it is intriguing. It's just like, I would think that they're going to want to keep one of Wallace or Dort, and like the Pistons can't. No team's really going to take Hartenstein's $30 million for next season unless you attach some like serious first round picks, which I don't think the Thunder are going to do.
Yeah, and just to give the pitch on Cason Wallace here for a second, I mean, he's a 22-year-old. This was just his 3rd season, so as you mentioned, extension eligible. But for the last 2 years, he's been right at about 8.5 points per game, right at about 3 or so rebounds, 2.5 assists, and just about 2 steals a night. So Cason Wallace, I believe he and Ausar Thompson last season led the NBA in steals. He's the type of player where, yes, he's still young, but he's got good size, about 6'4", right? So about 6'3", 200 pounds or so. Fantastic defender. Like you cannot say enough about his ability on that end of the floor. You're banking on projection. You're going to bring him in. You're going to give him an extension that's probably right around, if not a little bit less than, that Jalen Suggs deal that we've been using as a bit of a template for the Ausar Thompson extension, right? Like I think Ausar Thompson's probably going to go over that. Cason Wallace would probably be a little bit under that. But you're banking that this is like another Drew Holiday, because he's shown flashes of that. He's had some really nice games. He had a really nice stretch in the playoffs. I think that there's quite a bit there offensively for him to tap into. He just obviously isn't asked to do that there in Oklahoma City. So you'd be bringing in Cason Wallace to start. You'd be asking him to really step it up as an offensive player, try to get that scoring average up, and really bank on him and Ausar Thompson just being an absolute terror out there out on the perimeter for other teams to score against. So that's the pitch on him. I've long liked Lou Dort. I like the idea of adding him even at that contract. I think it's fair value for the type of player that he is. But, like I said, there's a little bit of a shooting concern on this one, especially if you're thinking maybe a starting lineup of like Cade, Wallace, Dort, Asar, Duren, right? There's not a knockdown shooter in that. You've got Cade, who's a pretty good shooter, but then Wallace and Dort are, mid 30s. Asar obviously not, and then Duren obviously not as well. So defense though would be fantastic in that group. That would be tough to score on if you got the trio out there of Dort, Wallace, and Asar Thompson.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, that takes any concerns you still have about Jalen Duren's defense away, especially if you have like Asar out there protecting the rim. So yeah, that would be a scary lineup. Who could shoot a little bit too. I mean, you'd still have Asar and Duren out there, but it adds some spacing. It would definitely be fun to watch.
I do think Wallace is probably going to be a better shooter than he is now. I mean, it really is. You're trying to project that Drew Holiday type line. So I think it's going to come for him. His form looks pretty solid, but it is not quite there yet. So to wrap this one up, needed a little bit more cap space. So I sent out Karis LeVert and a second-round pick for Taj Gibson and from the Grizzlies, who I then quickly waived. So this is just clearing caps off the books. You had to guarantee about $3 million for Taj Gibson this year in order to make the deal, but the Grizzlies are under the cap, so this is fine. This all works out. You waive that $3 million, use that cap savings to go and give Isaac Bonga the deal that they are probably going to give him. Bring back Javonte Green on a veteran minimum. And then I wanted another big man, actually. So I brought in kind of a fun name, player I've liked now for a couple years, Sandro Mamukelashvili, the guy with like 3 last names all squished into one. So brought him in on the 2 years, full non-taxpayer mid-level exception. What would you think about Mamu coming to Detroit?
I like Mamu a lot. I mean, he's like a big who doesn't have the most size, but he kind of does everything else. So I think it would be fun. And so I'm just looking at so you'd still have Isaiah Stewart here. And yeah, you can, I mean, Mamu, I mean, maybe he's in the rotation instead of Bonga and you move Harris down. I think he's an interesting piece that's versatile and would be interested in going to a contender. He's actually like a really nice guy too. I talked to him briefly with Julian Champagny, finals hero, at a Cruise game because they were there. Mamu played college basketball with Jared Rhoden, to bring up another former Piston. So yeah, just nice guy. I think he'd be good in the locker room too.
Mamu really flew under the radar last year, I think, in Toronto, because he very quietly put up 11 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. He had 2.3 stocks. But listen to the percentages. This is for a big. All right, he's playing a lot of his minutes at the center and power forwards. 53% from the floor, 39% from 3 on almost 4 attempts per game. And he's only doing this in about 22 minutes a night. Like, Mamukelashvili is a very good player. He's got a little bit of flashes off the bounce, but this is mostly a floor spacer, energy type guy. And I think he could come in and play right away. So part of the selling point to me with this kind of offseason idea, part of why I'd like it so much is you really have an 11 deep with this. Not like, the Pistons last year were playing 11 deep, but it always kind of felt like, wow, you've got a couple of guys that are doing a great job punching above their weight. They're big time surprises. No one expected to see what we did out of Javonte Green, for example, right? But with this group, and you haven't even factored in the first round pick yet, which the Pistons still would have been able to make. You've got Cade Cunningham, Danis Jenkins, Cason Wallace, Duncan Robinson, Lou Dort, Isaac Bonga, Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris, Mamukelashvili, Jalen Duren, and Isaiah Stewart. That is 11 guys that JB can do his expanded rotation with, and all of them can really play. Projecting a little bit on Bonga, but all of them can really play, I think. I love the depth too. Some of these guys are going to get hurt, right? So with that front court, Stu goes down, Kalashvili can play the center. Kind of a small ball center, right? If you have Robinson go down, you can step Green up. You can maybe grab someone at pick 21 that can fill that. Like this, the depth on that team would be incredible. The spacing, maybe not as much, but the depth would be fantastic.
And I think you didn't even bring up Javonte Green in that 11, right? Like you still
he'd be probably the 13th guy, honestly, because you figure whoever they're picking at 21 in this case would be 12.
Yeah. Yep.
So you got 13 dudes that can legitimately play, and then you're rounding out the back of the roster with Chaz Lanier, who's probably going to take some steps forward, good shooter. What can he do in year 2? And then Tolu Smith, who's a big that honestly I still really like a lot. I mean, I love Tolu Smith as the third center. He's not as good as Paul Reed, obviously, but good rebounds and blocks guy, good size, good hustle. That's for most teams all you could really ask for out of that third center spot. So I'd be all over that 15-man roster.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about the draft, but I think they can get a guy who can contribute immediately if they want at 21. Like there are a lot of names in that range that could help now. I mean, it depends what the front office does. Like, do they pick a one and done guy or a senior who's ready to go more immediately? But yeah, there's just like another avenue for even more depth on the team.
Before we get into our questions, voicemails that we got from last week that we promised we'd play here, I actually wanted to go and look at Isaac Bonga's stats. So just pulling this up now. Sorry, this is not great podcast hosting, but let's I'll do the EuroLeague where he played 38 games instead of ABA where he played 13. So in EuroLeague, it was 10 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, an assist and a half, 1.5 stocks. He shot only 31% from three and about 50% from the floor. In, EuroLeague, though, the previous season, he did shoot 41% from three and 45 from the floor. And that season, he did about 8 points per game. So there's something there with this. I think it'll be interesting. Someone in our live chat brought up maybe this is kind of a Javonte Green upgrade. Bonga's got a little bit more size, but similar athleticism. That's interesting. That's one to watch. Any final thoughts here? Final word on kind of the all-in style move for the offseason. Is this something you expect maybe the Pistons are actually considering, or is it still a little bit of wish casting on our part here to be spending a whole episode on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting them to do it, but I think it's a worthwhile conversation just because they're in the position to do it, both because you have the assets and you were one win away from the Eastern Conference Finals. So the only reason I think it's not as likely is I think we've just seen the front office believes in what they have. I mean, definitely some pieces more than others, and they can use those other pieces to improve the roster and fill those holes that they need to. So you kind of talked me into the Thunder one. I think that's it. Like it would be banking on the Thunder making a big trade and like trading two of their key pieces, which I'm not sure they would do, but if the Pistons could pull that off, I think that would be really strong.
All right, so before we get into voicemail questions, this was a good one here from MC313 earlier. So choosing between Stu and Holland, who would you rather throw in to finish a trade? Now, frankly, neither of these two players are throw-ins. These two would be kind of headliners of the deal, I think, no matter what. If you're looking at trying to go and get a big star player, a Kawhi Leonard, a Trey Murphy, well, then you're going to need at least one of these two, if not both, and first-round picks. So I think that these are both selling points to a deal. But as of right now, who are you more willing to part with? This is honestly a really difficult question for me.
Yeah, it's difficult. And I mean, I'll answer, but I do think it really depends on who you're getting back in the trade or what else you're doing and what holes you need to fill. But if it's just like, I can only keep one of those players, I kind of want to keep Ron Holland, as much as it pains me to say. Stu is such like a big part of this team. But just like after what we saw from Paul Reed in the playoffs, and Stu's role sort of went down a little bit, I guess I just buy the improvement from Ron Holland over keeping Stewart. It's so tough because Stewart's still one of the best rim protectors in the league and has been such a key piece of this team for so many years now. But at Ron Holland's still like 20 years old. If I had to choose between the two, I'd give Ron Holland a little bit more time.
I'll just go the devil's advocate route. I don't know if I'm actually fully on board with choosing Stu over Holland, or even vice versa. So I'll just devil's advocate for fun. Isaiah Stewart is, as you said, one of the best defensive big men in the league. He does have a little bit of a three-point shot, and he's a bird in the hand at this point. As well, I think the idea with Stewart at this point is you're banking that he can improve his playoff performance, because on paper, everything about his game screams vital playoff piece for a contending team off the bench. So if you're asking me, all right, you need to bank on Stu figures out the playoffs and he just maintains one of the best defensive big men in the league, one of the most switchable big men in the league, shoots it a little bit, solid offensive player, versus still kind of a lottery ball in Ron Holland, it'd probably be smart to keep the bird in the hand and just say, yeah, he'll figure out the playoffs. Otherwise, we have a really key piece with that. Now, I'll say too, like with Ron, like if you could guarantee me he's going to be a 17-point-a-night scorer in like 2 years, then it's easy, right? You keep Ron Holland. I just don't know if he's going to get there. He did not translate his game into the playoffs the way that I thought he might have this go around. And I think you kind of saw that with how JB kind of removed him from the rotation there down the stretch of that Orlando series, and a little bit to an extent with Cleveland as well. I was a little disappointed in that. Now, I don't think that that's a big reason for concern for Ron Holland. I kind of took that as, okay, he's not as far along as I thought. Right. So in a conversation like this, where there's now maybe even more projection than I had previously thought with Ron Holland, okay, maybe that's also more reason to go with keeping Isaiah Stewart in that case. Do you have any final word on this one, Blake, or should we move on?
No, I mean, I'm happy you made that case, because I think you can make a strong case for either. And it's a really tough call. I think it's just clear if the Pistons are going to make a trade, you have to like one of them is probably going out, and it's an interesting counter argument on both sides just because of where the team is, and you don't know what Holland is going to grow into. But it would be tough to see either of them go. I hope it doesn't happen, but I also know it kind of has to happen if you're going to make a trade.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to some of the voicemail questions from last week. First, we have our guy, a fella.
Yeah, I'm back. So I had a quick question. What is your dream free agent scenario? Forget about the actual possibility or chances of us getting them. Who would you love to have on the Pistons some way, shape, or form? All right, let us know. I look forward to hearing you on the pod.
All right. So who would be your dream free agent signing? I'll be honest, the free agency class is not all that exciting even if you're taking out cap limitations here. So I'm just going to say we already talked about my guy. I'm a big Sandro Mamukelashvili fan. I honestly think that maybe there's even a little bit of starter upside. Like if he's the big move, quote unquote, big move of the offseason, I could see a world where he pushes Tobias Harris to the bench. I'm all in. I think I love the guy's game. I'm a big fan of his. Two-way player, love the hustle. I'd be all for Mamukelashvili. That would be indeed the dream signing, as crazy as that is to say.
I mean, I'll take the full liberty of like going outside of realism and cap and whatever, and I don't think this guy will ever play for the Pistons, but I think it would be awesome to get Austin Reeves. Like, I mean, we're talking about all these scoring and just adding like a scoring punch next to Cade and helping make everyone's lives easier. I think Reeves is the guy who he's obviously going to make a lot more money next season. But I think he's like the perfect fit and in a class above like the names that we're talking about, Kobe White, Anthony Simons, Ayo. I think any of those guys would be great ads. But if I had to choose one need that I'm looking to fill, and I mean, if there's like the other one would be maybe a floor spacing big man. And if you look at the free agency list, like there's Porzingis, but his availability. So like, I'm just going to go with pure scorer. And I'll take Austin Reeves. I mean, I almost said Rui too, who Wes talked about on the last episode. So just someone who can provide scoring and shooting, and I think Reeves is the best one of the bunch out there, but super unrealistic, obviously.
My thing with Reeves is I think that he's an overpay at the he's the type of player that tends to get overpaid. As much as Pistons fans are concerned about Jalen Duren being overpaid, I think it's significantly more likely that one, Reeves gets even more than that, but then two, whatever they do get, that Duren can actually justify it, whereas I'm not as confident Reeves can. That is the only reason I did not go with Reeves, because otherwise, I mean, skill-wise offensively, he's an ideal fit next to Cade Cunningham. He can handle it, he can shoot it, he can create for himself. I am a big fan of his game. I just think he's gonna big contract. I think actually it just came out that he's looking for the max. I
don't doubt it, honestly. I mean, maybe at like a smaller scale, but also kind of realistic because he's restricted, is Ben Math. He had a great season, like after he got traded to the Clippers, before when he was in Indiana. Another guy we liked in the draft. I mean, I think the Clippers are going to want to keep him, and they'll have the right to. So not realistic, but a guy who won't make as much money as Reeves, but is his average like 15 points the past 2 seasons and has been really good like his whole career.
I don't know how that guy continues to get underrated. He's a good scorer, good shooter, and he's a pretty dang good defender at the two with solid size and above average athleticism. I'd love to steal him from the Clippers as well. Let's turn back the clock here for a second, though. We got a couple of questions kind of doing the breakdown of that Cavs series, right? So let's look at this voicemail here first from Sean.
Hi, this is Sean. Love the show, you guys. I have a question. I think if we'd had Asar and Holland out there together for their defense, it might have helped us against the Cavs, but obviously the issue is the floor spacing. How soon do you guys think it could happen that we could get the two of them out on the court together, and how? Do you think it's internal development with their shooting, or do you think the Pistons have another plan, or are they always going to have to stagger their minutes? Like, what do you think is the plan? Again, love the show. Thanks for taking my question. Bye.
All right, Blake, let's do a little bit of projecting here. Ron Holland and Asar Thompson minutes. How soon could it happen, and what would need to happen in order for it to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is the shooting, like Sean mentioned, and thanks for the question. I am sort of, I mean, I think it's safe to say that I'm fully out on the idea of like Asar ever growing into a shooter. But I mean, I think Holland still has room. He didn't take the leap that we wanted him to this year. We saw him knock down shots at times, but it's still a big work in progress. But if Ron Holland like stays flat, and I mean, I think he should improve somewhat next season. I think you can play them together. It's just like you can't play them next to Jalen Duren. So is it like, and I'm not sure that Paul Reed's the answer either. I mean, he knocked down some threes and can space the floor a little bit, but I think you would need to add someone on the roster that would help limit that. And like you could play small and have Asar play like small ball center and just put another shooter out there next to them to like avoid the limitations offensively. But it could be one of those things like we've seen with Asar so often that everything he does on defense outweighs those concerns and is like a good trade-off that you'll make. So I do think it's a bit of a lineup construction thing, but if Ron Holland improves his shooting, it makes the question a lot easier, but that's a big question.
Yeah, so just to set the table a little bit, since we're talking about improvement from Ron, from his rookie year to last season, he increased his points per game by about 2 points per game. Probably the biggest. He doubled his steals per game in only 4 more minutes, which is incredibly impressive. He also added about another rebound a game. Now, in terms of his efficiency, his 3-point percentage about the same. His field goal percentage actually went down, but you're dealing with some pretty small margins. If you're looking for something to like give you a bit of hope, right? It's that last month of the season where as a shooter, Ron Holland went 10 for 21 from 3. Holland is a guy where, I mean, I know I just said that in the playoffs, he kind of showed that he wasn't as far along as I had thought, but even so, he's so young. He's going to be 21 years old to start next season. And the raw talent that guy has, I really do think it's through the roof. He flashes every now and then the ability to handle the ball and make something happen, not in transition, but in the half court as a driver. And that's really exciting if he can start to scale that up. Every now and then he flashes that jump shot. The form looks really good. He was an 80% free throw shooter last year on almost 2 attempts per game. That's not nothing. That indicates a guy who at least has some potential as a shooter. Like, I think that some of the defensive mental lapses really went down last year, and he was a better cutter as well this season. Like he made a lot of really nice improvements this season. The question you want to keep asking is, can he make that next jump? Right? When does that happen? I don't know if it's next year. I really want it to be next year. I mean, if Ron Holland's a guy where truly, in my book, if he tightens up his handle and he becomes a league average 3-point shooter, both things more or less reachable to my eye in the next 2 years, you've got a starting caliber player that's an incredible defensive pairing with Asar Thompson out there. It's just the 2 questions of, well, is he actually going to do that? And then can you wait for it? And I don't know. So that my answer to this question, a great question from Sean, is just shoulder shrug. Like, it can happen. If he improves as a 3-point shooter, it can happen as soon as next year. But will it? I just don't know. I don't know. He's so much a ball of clay, He's so much a ball of clay.
Yeah, and that's kind of why it makes it like, I don't want to say okay, because if you trade Ron Holland and he turns into what you think he can be, then you're kicking yourself a little bit. But now that this team is where it's at and is in a position where it wants to win now, if you can move Ron Holland to bring back someone who is a strong defender and can shoot where you don't have these like offensive limitations and roster concerns, it might be worth it. I do think it'll take a little more for Langdon to move off of Holland, just because like that was his guy, his first draft pick. So I'm not really saying he will, but it does make it an interesting question with like how much longer he has to go before he potentially reaches what we all think he can be.
And I'll just say too, like from a general off-season perspective, where my honest opinion, where I'm at, if the Pistons had won 48 games, 49 games, this would be really easy for me. I would be sitting down, I'd be telling all of you, look, the Pistons have two players that if I were them, I really want to keep an avenue open for them to beat out another guy and earn a starting lineup spot. Those two guys would be Danis Jenkins and Ron Holland, because I think both of them, to varying degrees, have a path to being that type of player as soon as next year. And if the Pistons only won 48 games, you're looking at them as a nice playoff team. They were competitive. Let's not jump the gun. Let's wait. Let's position, we bring back Tobias Harris. We don't get him much competition other than Ron Holland. We bank on Danis Jenkins versus Duncan Robinson as a camp battle. And we see if those two guys can't make the visions reality. Because there's a world where both of them really take a huge step forward, and a starting lineup of Cade, Danis Jenkins, who has tightened up his handle, improved as a pull-up jump shooter in that consistency, and continues to play with the energy and effort and defensive capability that he already has. That is an incredible fit in the backcourt. Asar Thompson and Ron Holland out on the wing. If Ron Holland is a guy who can shoot it a little bit, around 36%, that's a great fit offensively in the front court. You're banging, Danis Jenkins can score the ball a little bit. You're thinking Jalen Duren's going to take a step as ball handler too. Like, it works. It works really well. But they won 60 games. And now that, that call to improve and really try to be a contender for real next year and make it to the conference finals, maybe make a finals appearance, it's all the more tempting. And so that's internally been quite a bit of my struggle with how I want to think about this offseason, just to be totally transparent and honest with all you guys. I keep waffling back and forth, and that's why. They're in such an unusual spot.
Yeah, it's tough, and you don't want to see like a team make rash decisions on their prospects. And I still think Ron Holland has a pretty high ceiling, but like next year is kind of the year. So if you keep him and he doesn't take he doesn't need to take a ginormous leap, but a significant leap, then you might be mad that you didn't move off of him when he had serious trade value. So it's a really tough question that the front office will have to ask, because we know the roster needs to improve, and like Ron Holland is an asset that can lead you to improving it. It's just a matter of if you're willing to make that call yet, which I'm happy I'm not the one that has to make it.
Me as well. All right, we'll wrap up the show on this question from Ed Spart 459 in the DBB comments. We did have one more voicemail question that I want to save for next week or maybe a week in the off season when there's less going on, because it was about broadcasting styles for national broadcast. It was a really good question. Unfortunately, the caller didn't leave their name. So just know it's in the queue. It's there. And I thought it was a great question. We liked it. We want to talk about it. Just don't want to shoehorn it into kind of the off-season projections or next week, for example, when we're doing draft conversation. So we will get to it. I do promise you, unnamed caller, we will just kind of later in the off-season. All right. But with that said, this question here from Ed Spart 459: what should scare the Pistons more? The fact that they probably would have lost to the Orlando Magic in round one if Franz Wagner did not get hurt, or the fact that they lost game 7 the way that they did to the Cleveland Cavaliers?
I'm gonna go with the Orlando series just because like the Pistons should have lost that series if we're being honest. And I think it was a true punch in the mouth that they answered in a great way. So I think it was it's a great experience and learning to have. I think it taught the team and the entire organization a lot about what they currently have. The game 7 against the Cavs, I think it was just, definitely a devastating performance when you're that close to the Eastern Conference Finals. And it's a matchup between two teams who both went 7 games in the first round series, and one came out flat, the other didn't. But I think you see that happen in game 7s. I think the Orlando series was just a lot more concerning, but it sort of is a wake up call. And like, I don't think the Pistons overlooked the Magic. I just think they were a little caught off guard with what the Magic were doing, and they still obviously like had the talent to win that series and move on. It's almost a miracle that they didn't. But I think the Pistons like digging themselves out of that hole is huge. But yeah, when you go down and are on the verge of elimination against an 8 seed as a 1 seed, that definitely scared me a little bit more.
All right, I'm going to be honest with you. The Orlando series gives me no pause. I don't think about it. It doesn't concern me. I don't think it's as bad as some have made it out to be. And I say that because Franz Wagner last season played only 60 games. He was a great player for them, 24 points per game. He was really efficient from the floor, not as much from 3, but fantastic player, Franz Wagner, in 60 games last season. This year, 34 games. If they had 60 or more games of Franz Wagner this year, they wouldn't have been the 8th seed. The Magic were banking on a guy who had played 60 or more games all 4 years of his career to that point, being a vital piece of their rotation. And he just wasn't. So the Pistons won 3 games in a row against the 8th seed Orlando Magic. That's how I look at it. They did. When Wagner was healthy for the first 4-ish games, they went 1-3. I think they could have won 1 or 2 more games if Wagner was healthy down the stretch of this one. Who knows? You just talked about the uncertainty of game 7s, right? If Wagner's healthy the whole way, I could absolutely have seen the Pistons forced a game 7. They won that game 2 without looking all that great. They were in the position to win game 1. And I want to say game 4 as well. One of those 2 on the road. Against Orlando when Wagner was healthy. They had a shot, right? So they were competitive in those games. It could have gone either way. So my point is, if you got the real Orlando Magic in round 2, it probably would have looked a lot more like how that Cavs series went. They got the injured Orlando Magic in round 1. And the Magic had been injured all year, and they mopped the floor with them for 3 straight games. That's solid. I'm happy with that. So I think more, to me, it's the Cavs series, but only because the Orlando series doesn't bother me all that much. I think if I'm the Pistons, my big concern is Jalen Duren didn't play all that well in the playoffs, so we got to fix that. Isaiah Stewart didn't play all that well in the playoffs, and I know everyone wants to say that he was injured, but the Pistons say he wasn't. And you know what, guys? In the first 3 games of that Magic series, even though he had the one game that had 8 blocks, he wasn't very good offensively. Wendell Carter Jr. and Goga Bitadze, they were playing Duren and Stewart off the floor in most of those games. That concerns me. So I'd be worried about the Pistons front court here. I'd be worried that Tobias Harris had to step up and score 20 points a night. And when that well ran dry, that's when the Cavs won. The Pistons should have had that series 1-5. And when they didn't, Tobias ran out of gas. And the series went the way that it did. Those would be the things I'm thinking about. I wouldn't be thinking about, if the Magic had their all-star caliber wing and a full healthy roster, that they would have been a hard matchup for us in round one. Wouldn't have been a round one matchup. I wouldn't be thinking too much. Yeah, they lost to the Cavs. The Cavs were all in, man. I mean, they got one of the most expensive payrolls in the league. That series was supposed to go to 7 games, and game 7s are unpredictable. I'd be more thinking about the player aspect of it, not necessarily the team-to-team comparison thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there were definitely some trends over the entirety of the postseason that are more of the concerning takeaway. So I'm totally with you there. But I think the good part of that is, I mean, we all knew what this team needed to improve. And I mean, they took a step last year, but to take that next step that we're waiting. So it's good that you got all that data to mold your offseason into what will make some of these issues not be the case, or at least not be as front and center next postseason. So I think that's at least the good you can take out of it.
And I will just say quickly, too, to continue adding a little bit of a high note, right, to end the show on. A couple of Pistons, so I'm thinking Jalen Duren and I'm thinking of Isaiah Stewart. This was the whole team's first real extended run right into the playoffs. They played 14 playoff games. I think as the playoffs went on, you saw Stewart and Duren both looking tired. And if you remember last year in the playoffs, right, if you remember last year, the big takeaway was Cade needs to be in better shape. Right, his shots were looking flat. He wasn't all that efficient. And he took that lesson. He turned around and had the season that he did. I think that's a big lesson right now for Stu and Duren as well. Hey, you got to be in better shape for the playoffs. And I think that's fair. I know Langdon brought that up for Stewart. I think it's a big takeaway for Duren as well. And since I brought up last season's playoffs, I'll also say that the Orlando Magic sound a whole heck of a lot like we Pistons fans did when we said, oh, you know, if Stewart were just healthy, would have beat the Knicks. And I keep saying, I don't know if that's true. So I'll tell it to the Magic fans too. Maybe if Franz were healthy, you guys would have won. I don't know that for a fact. Things change, right? And now we're talking about Stewart is not a great playoff performer. Who knows what Wagner's going to look like in the playoffs next year, right? So all that's to say, things went the way that they were supposed to is kind of my takeaway from the playoffs. You just got to improve.
For sure. And you won a series, you got one win away from the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think it was a win, but definitely some glaring holes that we have the whole offseason to address, which is great. But
and it is right around the corner.
Yeah. It's
the draft like a week and a half away.
Yeah, the good thing about the NBA is everyone moves on quickly. You don't even have time to digest who won the finals, which is fun if you're not in it. But shout out to everyone for joining us. And reminder, you can call our number to ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.